This Choircast podcast is brought to you by How to Not Suck as a Christian. This book is a witty, no BS guide to unlearning the toxic parts of Christianity, like purity culture, apologetics, and the idea that God's love is limited to straight conservative Americans. It's sharp, it's irreverent, and it'll definitely make your fundamentalist aunt clutch her pearls. You can get the audiobook on Audible. Print and ebooks of How to Not Suck as a Christian are available to ship to your aunt wherever books are sold. Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? Welcome to another Drinks and Deconstruction episode with me, Jeremy, and
Gabby.
Today we are deconstructing the LGBTQ passages in the Bible. And a lot of times I'm asking Gabby questions, but we're going to flip it this time.
Yes, we are.
But I'm curious, before we get started, like, growing up for you, what was the Bible and queerness situation growing up?
Yeah. I would say I feel like this is the typical kind of attitude that maybe I'm wrong, that most Christians have, where it's love the sinner, hate the sin, right? And so people would talk about how the Bible condemns homosexuality. So anybody who acts upon that behavior is wrong. Like, you can be gay, that's fine.
Right.
You just can't act gay, if that makes sense. Like, like it's fine if you're gay, but once you get into a relationship or want to get married, like, big no. And so the attitude's like, oh no, but we're not homophobic though. We love everyone, but then the love is limited, right? Like, they won't go to a wedding that's queer, or they won't actually, Anyway, so that's kind of was at least the attitude that I was surrounded by, is like, no, we love everybody. Like, we don't discriminate, but we kind of do.
Right. So do you have any, was there a moment where you sort of came head to head with it, or a pastor preached a sermon with your friend in the audience, or?
I mean, not really. This was kind of like everyone in my community had this mentality of like, we're not, like, we love everybody, but I think for me though, I did have a family member who, was lesbian or is lesbian. Mm-hmm. And this is hard for me to share. I'm in a very vulnerable moment right now. Okay. But, you don't have to share it. No, I will share, because this has been a learning experience for me. And I think this might help other people. And when I was very Christian, like, I really cared about honoring the Bible and the Word of God. But I also wanted to love everybody. I really took to heart the verses about loving your neighbor above yourself. Yeah. And I had a family member who is gay, and when she got into a relationship, of course I loved her and her partner. But when they got engaged, I didn't know how to react. Right. I was like, what do I say? Like, I was like, I don't know, and then I was having a conversation with my family about it. Like, I don't know if we get invited to this wedding, if I would go. And something happened where my family member told the mom of the girl who's getting married. It became a whole thing. I had to then talk to her about it. And she's like, I don't, like, I understand, like, the decisions that you're making is based off of, like, what your beliefs, but also we want people at our wedding that fully support us. Completely reasonable response, right? Yeah. But that caused us to grow apart. And so we just have not spoken. This was like for the past 2 years. And I actually, in my deconstruction, have thought about her. And I recently reached out and apologized. I was like, listen, I'm so sorry, right? Because one believes that, we're not homophobic, right? Like, we love them. But then, like, they won't go, like I said, it won't go to a wedding. And that's kind of where I was at. Right. So I will say, since then, like, they were very receptive to my apology. And they actually invited me to something. I was very excited to get an invite to, like, a graduation party. I was just there this past weekend. Yeah. And so I'm just very grateful that they were willing to, like, they didn't have to accept my apology and stuff. But I think one of the things that I've been deconstructing is the ideologies that I kind of, like, adapted, which is like, I'm not, like, it's always like, every time I talk to somebody, they're like, I'm not homophobic though. But it's like,
right.
but you kind of are.
But you are, right?
Right. And so I'm very happy to be on the other side of, if someone got married, I wouldn't think twice. I'd absolutely go, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of the mentality around like the LGBT community. It's kind of like, no, you can like, I don't know if you saw the books that were circulating, if you read books, but what was popular was like single gay Christian. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it. I've not read it.
Well, I read it, and basically the guy's point of view was like, I love God, I'm gay, I'm going to choose a life of celibacy. Like that was his conclusion, right? That's really hard, and I feel bad for him. You know, so that's kind of like, oh yeah, it's fine if you're gay as long as you're celibate.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason, in my experience,
please,
the reason that people in the queer community choose that is because they've been told that the Bible says that homosexuality is a sin, or homosexual practice, which I don't know, that's always kind of creeped me out.
Yeah.
That because and I'm trying to play nice with the TikTok gods right now and not say any of the words that get us shut down, but
sorry.
No, you aren't. It's fine. But the idea that like you're gonna talk about a specific type of thing that you do in your bedroom, basically, right? And because they'll say it's not the orientation, it's the act, and I'm like, ew,
yeah.
Like, why are you saying this? Yeah. So, yeah, okay. So when you walked in today, I said something, and you're like, wait, what?
Yes. So I was asking because, I mean, I don't know if you want to give context. You went to this event, but you were
actually, it's called 1946.
Yeah.
The movie. It was a World Pride event, part of the film festival, and I'm going to get to interview the director. We're going to be live tomorrow. Really interesting story. Tomorrow at 6:15 ish, because everything is ish because.
Right.
The studio, right? Okay, so anyway, that's where I went. I told you I went to this movie,
right? And you had mentioned about it was when the first word, or the first time that the homosexuality as a word showed up in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So then I asked you, what do you mean?
Like, hey, wait,
what do you mean when it showed up? Like it wasn't like, you mean the English word or the first time in any translation? I wanted some clarity here.
Yeah. So in 1946. That's when the Revised Standard Version of the Bible was released.
Okay.
And that's an English version. So it's the first time homosexuality was used in a translation of the Bible, and in an English translation, clearly, because it's an English word. However, really in any translation. So homosexual is a homosexuality, all of the how do you say that? All the different
variations of I mean, I guess the stems and the roots that are used to make the word, the morphology of the word, maybe.
The morphology of the word, that's it. All the different versions of it.
Yeah.
That word didn't exist until the 19th century. Right? So as far as the English language is concerned, it's pretty recent, which means, well, let me ask you, if a word is pretty recent to the English language, what does that say about its meaning? Like, because like some words, I don't know, it feels like some words, the original meaning is tied to this moment in time.
Yeah.
And then it kind of tracks along to today, and it like meanders through slightly different things. Oftentimes it means very similar. Love, for example, means something similar, but charity doesn't. Right?
I mean, I feel like we had discussed kind of this concept in a previous podcast, but language is ever changing. Mm-hmm. And so words are going to pick up different meanings based off of the context and the culture that it's in, right? And I kind of give this example with the word gay. Like gay used to mean happy and jolly, and then has acquired this meaning of, you know, referring to someone who's maybe part of the LGBT community, or maybe someone who is homosexual. And so if a word is appearing, it's because there has been a shift, right, in redefining certain practices for the word then to fit that definition.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that it's real, the idea, or I should say, our understanding of sexuality in the last 200, 300 years has expanded a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Right? And so that term, being very recent, it's very much tied to this understanding of sexuality.
Yeah.
Right? And so, because so much has changed, so much has changed in our understanding about sexuality, homosexuality is very much tied to this modern understanding.
Right.
Right. And so it could be very problematic to translate an ancient Greek term to this term that's very rooted in right now.
Absolutely.
Right. And so when the Revised Standard Version of the Bible comes out, and this is what that movie is all about.
Right.
But when the Revised Standard Version of the Bible comes out, it translates arsenokoitai and malakoi as homosexual. And so but what happens is, like, that is a translation that had, I think it was 20 primary scholars, and they worked for a long time translating the RSV. When it comes out, it is the sort of authoritative version. It's the one that everybody references. And then they don't do a revision until the late 70s.
Okay.
In between there, the Living Bible, the New International Version, and the ESV come out. I think the ESV is in there. Anyway, those are the primary Bible sold, high selling translations right now on the market. And when the revised version comes out, they don't use that term anymore. But
the new revised version,
the new revised standard changes that to men who engage in illicit acts or something like that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, all of these other translations base their translation off of the RSV. So they start with the RSV and they update the language, but the RSV is the sort of default standard. And so a lot of those translations, particularly I grew up with the NIV, they didn't really reflect on that.
Right.
They just put it in. And then the Living Bible, which is a paraphrase by some guy, right? Not by a leading Bible scholar. He wanted a Bible that was easy to read to his friends, to his kids. He puts homosexuality in the Old Testament too. So RSV put it in the New Testament. He just throws that all over the place.
Do you know his name of this person?
I can't remember that guy.
Okay.
You should watch 1946.
I actually am going to. I'm very interested.
You can get it on Amazon.
Thanks. I will.
Yeah. And later on Apple TV. But, okay. So, and culturally, this is Ronald Reagan, the rise of the religious right.
Right.
And this sort of merging of the power of the church, power structures of the church, and the power structures of Republican politics. And so eventually, when it's changed, they've already labeled the queer people as the enemy in a lot of places. And at the same time, the AIDS epidemic happens.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a couple of passages where it says that they will pay for this in their bodies. And so these conservative pastors, looking for a scapegoat, looking for all of that, say, look, the gay people are paying for their sin with this epidemic, which it wasn't just queer people, right? Like, it was straight people too. It was more prevalent in the queer community because there was more. There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But and so by the time it's fixed, it doesn't matter.
Right. The damage is done.
Right. And now this political ideology and all of this stuff is tied to these other translations. And so now it's a war against those translations and the academics who are saying it was wrong. Now, there's a whole really interesting story about how that came to be. That's 1946, the movie. But I feel like we could walk through the passages.
We should.
So you've got the Bible.
Yes.
I know that you know how to use it.
Right.
In a physical form.
Right.
Right? Now, did you have to bring a physical Bible? Did it count to have it on your phone?
Oh yeah, it would. You had more clout if you brought a physical Bible than to use it on your phone.
Right.
Like, people could see you writing up and highlighting and stuff.
And especially if it was like really worn.
Yeah,
had
like
lots
my
of stuff hanging out of it.
The back of it fell apart. I
Yeah.
had to get a new one.
Oh man!
Yeah.
And then you got to tell people about that.
Yeah, I'm like,
Right.
hey, my Bible just unfortunately just got worn.
If you can tell, I've got bragging rights on this
you
puppy.
definitely do.
Right? Okay, so this is NIV. This is the one I want you to use first, because we're going to read from that. Okay, so I'm going to have to take all of that out of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you are? That's like a little segment.
Not being prepared with Bibles.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are. I want you to go... okay, so people will say that it starts in Genesis 1 and 2.
Oh,
right,
I
because
know what
God
verse you're gonna...
creates Adam and Eve. So then that happens. That's in Genesis chapter 1, towards the end. I don't think I've got that in the specific one in my notes. Do I have it? Yeah. Anyway, it says when God creates him. Do you see that? It's like down in the end of the creation narrative. At the end of towards the end of chapter 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you read that?
So this is verse 27.
Okay.
Sorry, let me just make sure I'm corrected. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Right.
Keep going. Or stop.
You can. Go ahead.
God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground.
Right. So God created man and woman, and one of the commands related to that is fill the earth, right?
Yes. I just thought of something, but
go ahead. Go for it.
No, it's just, I remember people saying like, oh, well, the reason why homosexuality is wrong is that we can see it through biology because only a man and a woman can reproduce. So clearly biology states that this is the way it was supposed to be.
Right. Except of all of my friends that can't reproduce.
Right.
Right. With all kinds of different fertility issues.
Right.
And there's only one way that you can have an enjoyable experience that could also produce a child.
Right.
When men and women can do all kinds of different things. Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so the idea here is that it was meant for procreation.
Right.
But it doesn't say that. It also doesn't say anything. And it's about man and a woman.
Right.
Right. It doesn't say like, and this is the only thing that's like, it says nothing directly about that.
Right.
Right. And so there's an important piece just when you're looking at ancient spiritual texts, you can't make an argument from silence. Right? Just because something doesn't say anything, it may be of note that some passage, book, section doesn't say anything about it.
Right.
But it's not anything to base anything off of, right? If you're going to say like, I mean, the thing that pastor said around me was, or in the congregations that I was in, was it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Oh,
I know. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Also, who defined names? Let me be so for real, because let me not even get started on that. But yeah,
no. No,
it's just like someone has decided that the name Eve is. We don't even know if that name is supposed to be interpreted feminine like. Yeah. We haven't decided what is feminist and masculine.
Right. For sure.
I can't talk. Masculine
and feminine.
Yeah, there you exactly.
Yeah. Right.
So you making a name argument is, to me, kind of crazy.
Well, and they did it as a joke. That was a punchline, and people would laugh. Right? And none of the queer people that were in the closet would laugh. So anyway, so it doesn't start there. The next place is in Genesis chapter 19.
Okay.
So this is once you see what story it is, I'm going to get you. Do you know this story?
The Sodom and Gomorrah, of course.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So tell me the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in general.
So the way that it, I mean, I know now the corrected version, I guess, but what we were taught, I'll say at least what I was taught.
What you were taught, go ahead.
Sodom and Gomorrah was a city full of sin. Uh-huh. People were doing shameful acts, like I think men were sleeping with men or whatever. Then 2 angels came down and wanted to... see, now I need to remember how I was taught. They wanted to have sex with other men. Uh-huh. Yes. And so God was like, what is on earth happened to this city? I'm gonna, and then Lot, right?
Smite them.
And then the salt. And so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then the salt, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah.
So what happens... If you read the extra, and so this is like, again, a lot of times people don't read it, or they read it after the pastor tells them what it means.
Yeah.
And so when you read it on the face of it, the story is God's going to smite them. And prior to the actual Genesis chapter 19 and chapter 18, God tells Abram that he's going to go smite them. And Abram says, like, what if there's only 50 people that are righteous? What if there's 20? What if there's 10? Like, haggles with God, trying to get him to not do it. And then the angels go. Nobody invites them into their home. Lot does, and they should. Like, inviting them into their home is a thing. Lot invites them into his home, and then it says, like, all the men of the town come to his door and says, let these 2 men out. So that we can know them. And that's a euphemism in the Bible. Right. To know someone. It would be like, and then he went in, like after they got married, and he knew his wife. Right. So what they're asking is to have relations with the 2 men that are in Lot's house. And Lot says, no. And they like bang on the door. They beg him. And Lot offers his daughters, which is really sketchy. And like, my daughters haven't laid with a man. How about them? And the guys are like, no. And then the angels are like, no. And then they like confuse all the men, whatever. They go away. But I mean, you know gay people. You have gay friends.
I do.
Is that a story about your gay friends?
No.
Right. Not as violence.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a word that if we say it on TikTok, it rhymes with the fruit grape and use it. But this is like gang right. Gang violence. And that's not the same thing.
Right. At all.
And then later in Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, there's this additional piece where the Bible in Ezekiel, it actually says, oh, the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's like says what the sin is, which is interesting because like there's not a lot of times where there's some clarification within the Bible about the Bible. You're failing right now.
I found it. I found it.
You're failing.
I'm not a new Old Testament.
The Bible's book test. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49. And it's So go ahead, read that because it tells us a traditional understanding of what was actually wrong with Sodom and Gomorrah.
You said verse 49?
Verse 49.
Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them as you have seen.
Okay, so, right? They didn't help the poor and the needy.
What? Hello?
Right? Which
Overfed and unconcerned.
That hits hard. Overfed and unconcerned. I don't know.
Also, why is it a woman? I'm sorry. That doesn't help women either. Like,
no, it's hashtag patriarchy. Right?
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Okay. So Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
That's not about that.
No.
Right? Not about. So then we go to Leviticus.
I already know which verse this one is.
We're going to start in chapter 18.
Everyone loves to quote this one.
Verse 22.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Have them serve as judges for the people at all times. Am I reading that correct? You said 22?
Leviticus 18:22?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's...
Maybe it's 19:22.
19.
I don't know what's going on. These are my notes. No. I hope I didn't get this wrong. Well, let's do a...
I know what you're talking about, the homosexuality being an abomination. Hold on, where is it?
Yeah, 18:22. Leviticus 18:22. Did you? Maybe you just were reading the wrong chapter.
Oopsies, I was in Exodus.
Okay, that's so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus.
Right,
Leviticus is after. I was like,
bad. Wow. My bad. Okay, sorry. This reads, "Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. That is detestable."
Okay, that is detestable. So and in Living Bible, it says homosexuality, right?
In the what Bible?
The Living Bible.
Okay.
The paraphrase by some random guy. So this is, there's a word here. So the word to lie with, right? That is a word called mishkabe. Mishkabe is really like, well, there could be a couple of translations of it. It's like very rare and it's hard to translate. Like if you are you are a linguist and you're trying to figure out what a word in an ancient language means, and there's only 3 instances of it. There's no existing dictionaries. What do?
Look at the context,
right,
in which the word appears.
Yeah.
Try your best to piece what you know, like from culture and history, to give it a meaning.
Yes, exactly. That's this word, mishkabe. And so mishkabe means, it appears that it means like roaming, like sexual relations without commitment. It also is related to a term that talks about temple sex workers. And like that happening in worship to other gods, which also has a little bit of credibility here because Leviticus is a document that is talking about worship a lot. It's directing the priests and how they should order the life of the church. Mm-hmm. And so it also could mean that.
Okay.
It does not mean what you and I mean when we talk about our gay best friend.
Right.
Right? So let's look at then Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. That's going to be after chapter 18.
Right. 2013, you said?
Yeah.
If a man lies with a man as one lies with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They must be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have it's the same word. But now we also sort of can think about, this talks about a man lying with a man. Does not talk about a woman lying with a woman.
Right.
Right? And our modern understanding of sexuality does not make a differentiation between those two. Right?
Right.
We have different words. But that's it's part of the same stuff. Right? Two women getting married, two men getting married. It's homosexuality. Right? And clearly, this doesn't talk about that. It's not talking about that's a clue. It's not talking about our modern way of thinking about it. And partially because the way ancient culture thought about sex, very different than our modern culture. Dan McClellan uses the phrase, it is what a active sexual agent does to a passive sexual object, right? And it's always a man with a woman, she is passive, or with a slave, right? But it's a hierarchy, and it's a dominance, it's all this kind of stuff, which is not how we view that today.
Right.
Right? It's a completely different understanding. And so the reason a man with a man is a problem is because one of them is being passive and receiving, the other one is being active, and so with that, it violates that cultural way of thinking about it. And yeah.
Hey, your book talked about this, actually. You mentioned it. Yeah, How to Not Suck as a Christian. There's a whole chapter. And now you talked about this, I'm like, wait, I've read this somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Leviticus. That's all of the Old Testament passages. Okay.
Not that many.
Right. Now, the next passage is from the book of Romans.
I know this one.
Yes. However, just to note, we're not going to make an argument from silence. We just passed over everything Jesus said. Right. Right?
Right.
He talked about a lot of things. He didn't talk about what happens in people's bedrooms.
Right.
He could have. Now, it's not an argument that Jesus was that anything except to say that of the importance levels, this didn't make it into the final cut. Right? He may have taught about it, but we just don't have it. Okay. So Romans chapter 1, and it starts in verse 18.
Yep.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen.
Okay. So, this one seems different.
Right.
How?
Well, for one, I feel like we are hearing like God is directly speaking or has an opinion about this, and he's also this is this is one of the longer ones that's talking about just God's wrath against mankind in general.
Right.
And this is a small little section in there that talks about God gave them over to their sexual impurity or whatnot.
Right. Right. And he says that they gave up their natural relations
for their unnatural
ones. Now, there's a really great book called Reading Romans Right that just came out. Keith Giles, Matthew DiStefano. It was great. It's a great book. They have a like rhetorical way of talking about the book of Romans, where basically they talk about it kind of like Plato, Socrates, like where a logical argument will be like, okay, here's a 4, here's in caricatures, so that then at the end you're like, no, this is ridiculous, this is like, and they put this as part of his argumentation that that he's not advocating for this, right? This is not a good thing, a good way of thinking. However, even if you want to let go of the rhetorical argument, just on the face of it, if you are coming to it and realize we're not wanting to have marriages or a view of human sexuality that they had 2,000 years ago, right? We don't buy our wives or our husbands. And you just sort of look at it then from a fresh lens, exchanging natural relations for unnatural ones. Well, if you talk to a lesbian, they would say, I mean, how would they describe what is their natural?
To be attracted to someone who's also a woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So then if you read that, they don't know our modern understanding of homosexuality, right? They don't have the verbiage. They don't even know that they need to address these issues. Paul doesn't, but just on the face of it, it would, if you apply it with this deeper understanding, then it says, well, I mean, what do you think? How would you apply it?
Well, from what I think you're trying to get at, it's like, well, one can make the argument that unnatural relations for someone who is gay would be to be with the opposites.
Right. Would be gender, to like pretend to be straight.
Right. Therefore that would be sinful. Right. To not be genuine to oneself and their desire, you know. Right.
And again, I don't want to take any of this because it's all talking about something that's very culturally bound. But if we are to do it, then it still doesn't say what they say it says. Okay. The next ones are the ones that are the topic of this movie, the 1946. Or they talk about the whole thing, but these two are like the impetus for the movie. And this is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. And you're going to read it in the NIV version. And then I've got it here in the New Revised Standard updated edition.
You said 1 Corinthians what?
6, 9, and 10.
Sorry. Okay. Do you not know that the wicked will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor male prostitutes, nor homosexual offenders, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God.
Okay.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. And homosexuals are in there with, I don't know, thieves. Like, it's pretty offensive in a lot of different ways. But this is this word, these two words, malakoi and arsenokoitai. And I'll read you. So this is the updated version.
Please.
It says, do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. The sexually immoral, idolaters, adulterers, male prostitutes, men who engage in illicit sex. Right? That is...
What does illicit mean?
Well, this is implied, right? This is like, again, this is another one of those words that there's not very, like if somebody, like in the movie 1946, it says, somebody says, if somebody tells you what arsenokoitai means, they're lying to you. Nobody fully knows. And so this is a little bit gray, which is good because the actual word is a little bit gray. But that's what it feels like. It is the best translation in modern English. Now, prior to 1946, if you look at other translations of the Bible that were being done sort of close to that, for like Martin Luther forward, it's some version of adults with children, right?
Is the name of the book? Or?
No, like acts between adults and children.
I see.
Right, that's for a long time. Yeah, but that's still a little bit too specific as far as like modern scholars would say. We don't know that either. It's illicit acts. We don't know exactly what kind, but homosexuality is not the right word. It happens again in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10. Can you do 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10?
I just need to know what this word means.
What, arsenokoitai?
No, illicit. Illicit with an I?
Yes, illicit.
Oh, okay. I just wonder
illicit is like bringing something out. Illicit is like scandalous, inappropriate.
Unlawful.
Right, unlawful. Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Not clear at all. Okay, so
1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 10.
For adulterers and perverts, for slave traders and liars and perjurers, and for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine. Wait, sorry, keep going.
Oh, wait. Okay, so the NIV doesn't do it exactly right the exact same way. But this is another place where homosexuality was put in other translations. This is that arsenokoitai, verse 10, would say, again, here, it says, the sexually immoral, men who engage in illicit sex.
Oh.
Right? And so you get all the way through the Bible. There's another one in Jude, but it's like the Sodom and Gomorrah story. It's not talking about that. And so it doesn't talk about it. Those aren't the right words.
Right.
And so what does that do when you realize that stuff as you're deconstructing?
Well, it just makes me feel like, again, I was withheld information about the context, the words, and already what's been bothering me is that you said that the NIV and the ESV were translations based off of another translation, which from a linguistic perspective is awful. That's not how translation is supposed to work, right? Translation itself already, when you're translating from another, not even just a language, but another context, that's already difficult to do, right? To translate ancient words or ancient concepts or older concepts to now modern times, but then to do it off of an already done translation, now you're not getting it on authentic right? And so I'm hearing this and I'm like, I don't trust what was written in Roman. The one that I really stuck on and read a lot was the Romans verse, right? It's like, oh, well, this is God definitely talks about it, but actually, no, he doesn't, you know, or no, it doesn't, right? I don't even know if the Bible's God inspired, but it makes me be like, well, forget all the allergies I used to have, which I kind of only let all that other stuff go. And I'm like, I'm just going to love people the way I feel like we're supposed to.
Yeah. And so, and the ESV is even worse. So the NIV, was talking about updating some of its language. And the religious right said, that's not okay. The liberals are taking over the Bible translation. So they did the ESV. And the ESV is more, so the NIV does other things too. So for example, the Bible doesn't speak with one voice. There's discrepancies. And like, for example, in the two creation stories, mankind is created at the end in the creation in the creation account with the 7 days. And in the next part of the story, it should be that God creates man again, basically.
Right.
And I mean man there. There's humanity in the first one that creates together, the second one. And the NIV changes the words, shifts the translation to make it seem like it matches, right? And so it's like they change the tense of a verb to like I can't find it right now, but like now man had been created instead of God created man. Right. So had been created versus created, to harmonize it, to make it feel like there's not a discrepancy. But the ESV goes even further with that and adds all sorts of like conservative, modern conservative viewpoints to it. Yeah. Okay, so that's just the Bible side of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, it's not just about queer people. It's about our bodies and our relationships in general, right?
Yes.
So we're doing this right now. It's World Pride. You and I live in the DC area.
Yes.
So we get extra amount of pride because the World Pride celebration actually started this past weekend. Yeah. And so, I don't know. I feel like this is one of those things that's been weaponized and used to hurt people.
Literally.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, how many queer friends did you have that were hurt by this kind of stuff?
So many.
Yeah.
And just so many and just a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like another example of someone, a typical Christian who says they're Christian and then goes to like say some problematic stuff. So it would bother me, Right. And I was like, I need to, and then I just said, I'm letting this stuff go. I can't. Yeah.
So you did that before you fully...
Honestly, I was a typical person who was like, I feel like I went a bit further than my other Christian friends because I at least had friends of people who are gay.
Yeah.
Some people just can't do that. They can't handle having friends that are not Christian. But I had friends of all types, all religions, all...
Well, and let's just be clear. They could have friends with gay Christians.
Right. No, I mean, because as long as they put the Christian title on it, it's okay. Right. Yeah. But usually in my community, gay Christians were people who chose celibacy. Like they were not, know. Right. And I just remember like when I was, I came to DC, so I had even more queer friends and I love them all. They're near and dear to my heart. They're my closest friends. Right. And so, I remember I would open up the Bible. Right. And like, I remember at one time I specifically had a best friend, who's gay and he's married actually. He's been married for 10 years to his husband. Mm-hmm. And I opened up Psalms 1 and it talked about cursed are the wicked. Right. Or talks about the whole passage like blessed is the one whose flower gets flourished and they have a stream, but then curses the wicked and anybody who walks among their path. And for theirs are like forever days of destruction. And I'm like, I can't in good conscience like read this and then go profess I love my friend when I think subconsciously that they're going to hell. Like that didn't sit well with me. So I literally just stopped reading it. I just stopped reading the Bible. I was like, that was the start of my deconstruction. Honestly, that was part of the, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's really helpful is So we're part of this Not Church community.
Yeah.
And there's queer people in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times as a person who might be spiritual that's not straight, finding a community that will let you talk about that and figure that stuff out and process all of your religious trauma is huge.
Absolutely.
And, you know, this Not Church thing is like on Discord. And so for people who don't know, Discord has these different channels. Like you can click in, it's like a chat room almost, but it's mostly asynchronous.
Right.
But, and one of our things is like LGBTQ issues. And we've got people that are in there talking about that all the time. And I think that's really helpful because a lot of people don't have a place where they can process that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to talk about it with other people, especially if like religion or your faith has caused you to kind of like hide a big part of your identity. Yeah. That's really hard.
Well, and I think for someone who is not gay, right?
Yeah.
For a straight person, especially a straight person who grew up like you did in that stream, to sort of be in a community that is talking about this openly and respectfully. I mean, does that help you?
No, it definitely does. I mean, I feel like for the first time, like I'm opening myself to hearing even these conversations, because I think before we would talk about it, but of course it's always from our privilege of being like straight people who don't understand, like at least helps me to hear people's stories. And like, I mean, I love hearing when people are vulnerable and talk about it. Yeah.
So if people are interested in that, I really think you'd love it if you're straight or not. And the way you do that is you go to patreon.com/skepticpastor. That's patreon.com/skepticpastor. And you will, it's $3 a month. And if it works, great. If you don't, you just lost $3. That's it.
Right.
And I think you'd really love it. And if you are listening to this podcast, give us all the stars.
Yeah.
That really helps. That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.